Thank you so much for tuning in and welcome to Serve's podcast series. The podcasts are brought to you by Serve at UNC Greensboro. We are a university-based center with over 3 decades of experience working with educators and policymakers to improve education. These podcasts highlight conversations on various topics ranging from early childhood education to high school reform with a lens on equity. My name is Sana Silvera Roy, a communication specialist at Serve, and I will be your host today. All the podcasts will be archived and found on Serve's website at www.serve.org. Today's podcast will start a 3-part series discussing the topic of early college high schools and the impact on post-secondary outcomes. This series will feature discussions on early college high schools, impacts on equity, school supports, and student outcomes. We will then round out the discussions on lessons learned and implementing those lessons. Before we dive into the discussions, I would like to introduce our featured guest. Both have a vast array of expertise in early college high schools. First, joining us is Dr. Julie Edmonds. She is the director of the Early College Research Center at UNC Greensboro. Julie is nationally known and recognized as a researcher on early colleges and dual enrollment. Since 2006, she has been leading a longitudinal experimental study of the impact of early colleges. She has also led evaluations of 4 large-scale efforts to implement early college strategies in comprehensive high schools. Julie is currently principal investigator of a 5-year evaluation of the impact, implementation, and cost of North Carolina's dual enrollment program. Also joining us is Matt Bristow-Smith. In 2014, he started as the principal at Edgecombe Early College High School. Before his role as principal at Edgecombe Early College, Matt spent 16 years as an English teacher at Tarboro High School in Tarboro, North Carolina. In 2019, Matt was named Wells Fargo North Carolina Principal of the Year and Wells Fargo North Central Principal of the Year. Matt received these awards for his work leading Edgecombe Early College High School to high student performance. As the award winner, Matt traveled across North Carolina as an ambassador for education. Each episode is a conversation between Julie and Matt, who offered their perspectives from the research side and the practitioner side of early college high schools. Let's dive right into the discussions. Matt, as an early college high school principal, what do you want people to know about early college high schools and its impact on post-secondary outcomes? Julie, please offer your expertise as a researcher on early college high schools and its impact on post-secondary outcomes.
Thanks for having us today. I'm so excited to be here and to talk about something I'm very passionate about, Edgecombe Early College High School. I think before I talk about our high school, what I'd like to do is take a moment to talk about Edgecombe County, because I think it's important to know our high school in the context of the community that we serve. So Edgecombe's in rural eastern North Carolina. We're a high poverty county. We're a county where on the Public School Forum's Roadmap of Need, we're ranked 95 out of 100 counties in North Carolina. So when you looked at education, economic development, when you're looking at crime and safety, when you're looking at healthcare, all of those indicators indicate Edgecombe is a place that students growing up in that environment experience challenges before they even go to school. And so as a high school principal and as someone who believes that school is the launching pad for futures of incredible opportunity, our high school, being innovative, embedded in this environment, capitalizes, I think, upon a rich opportunity we have to address some of the challenges outside of school and to prepare kids for an incredible future. So Edgecombe is rich in a lot of different ways. As I said earlier, we're rural. The Princeville, which is the first community that was chartered by freed Black slaves, is in Edgecombe County. So there's a rich history there in so many different ways, but we also have these incredible challenges. So Edgecombe Early College is embedded in Edgecombe County. We serve all 5 of the middle school feeder schools in our county. We have 200 students. We are a school that's committed to each and every student graduating with a credential that prepares them for what comes next after school. And as the principal there, I've also my entire career worked in Edgecombe County. As Santa said, I was a 16-year English teacher at Tarboro High School. I've been at this school for 8 years, so my entire career has been committed to Edgecombe and to the students and families there. It's just a real opportunity, I think, to create a trajectory, a life map for kids that takes them from Edgecombe County and allows them to become contributing to members of whatever community that they land in when they graduate.
Matt, talk a little bit about what the early college actually looks like in Edgecombe Early College. So if a student is going to go there, what can they expect to experience?
Yeah, so Julie, great question. We are a 5-year high school, not a 4-year high school. There are some early colleges in North Carolina that are 4 and others that are 5. We're committed to a 5-year program. That means that students that come to us make a commitment to being at our school for 5 years and graduating with their Associates of Arts or Associate of Sciences degree. Many of them graduate with a CTE certificate. In the course of their time with us, there are a number of project-based learning activities that we complete that help kids to develop what we call the 4 C's, the critical thinking, the communication, the collaboration, the creativity. These are the life skills that don't necessarily show up on a test score, don't show up on a report card. They are the skills that employers and that educators and that colleges say they want to see in children. And so we have those PBLs built in across all 5 grade levels. And a student who enters in 9th grade and stays with us through year 13 is going to experience these Buck Institute gold standard project-based learning experiences, along with career internships that they take their junior year, senior projects they complete their senior year, their super senior year. They will have very focused counseling about completing college applications, about completing scholarships, completing the FAFSA. So the idea is that a student who joins our school is joining a pathway or a structure that both supports them individually, gives them a lot of voice and choice in the kind of learning experiences that they engage in, but also that provides a path for them graduating ready for what comes next, whether that is community college or 4-year college or military or straight into the workforce.
I think Edgecombe is really an exemplar of what we can see in the early colleges and what we see across the state of North Carolina. And actually, this is really growing across the country, is you've got these, so these are these small schools, and in most cases, small schools. Sometimes there are large comprehensive high schools that are sort of transitioning into this. But the students have these very personalized experience. You talk a lot about instruction. I think instruction and a really rich instructional experience is extremely important for you too. And then there's this curriculum, right, that allows them to earn a high school diploma and college credit, either 2 years of college credit or enough to get an associate's degree. And so it's really this intense sort of academic experience, I think. And then you also have a ton of supports, and you haven't talked about that yet, but I know that there's lots of supports in place to make sure that students are successful. So it's a much more rigorous experience for students, right? But then at the same time, there are supports in place to make sure that those students can be successful. You're not just throwing them to the wolves, right? You're making sure that students are going to be successful.
Yeah. So Julia, you're exactly right. One of the things that I didn't mention early on, I probably should have, is that our high school is embedded on a community college campus. And so students that are attending Edgecombe Early College are really taking the road not traveled or not typically traveled. They have been in a different feeder pattern, an elementary school and middle school feeder pattern. And that feeder pattern also has a traditional high school in our county. And all of our students have said, we want to try something different. And so they have applied to the early college, have been accepted, and they are now becoming first-year students on a community college campus. In fact, just last week, I completed our Bridge Week freshman transition program, where we brought on board the 40 incoming freshmen for this year, all of whom are 13 and 14 years old, and all of whom are immediately dually enrolled in the community college. They're so proud that they have a community college ID that has their picture on it at age 14. So yes, you're exactly right, Julie. The high school curriculum is rigorous, but it also has tons of support. The college piece is also so important because not all students are ready to begin taking college classes at the same time. And so we really keep an eye on readiness for college classes, and we begin enrolling students in their first college classes sometimes as early as spring semester of their freshman year, knowing that when students are ready, they will be successful in those college classes, but we don't want to put them in there until they are ready. We do have a really great partnership with Edgecombe Community College and with the president there, Dr. Greg McLeod, our Edgecombe superintendent, Dr. Valerie Bridges. They're wonderful partners. And I think one of the fundamental underpinnings of that partnership is that we have a memo of agreement. We have a memo of understanding between the public school system and the community college that lays out the terms of our partnership. But even aside from that, I think it's also worth really noting and elevating that we also have a shared value, that the community college really values their service to Edgecombe County. Our school system superintendent values each and every scholar. And we realize that although these are two schools that are merging to serve kind of one group of students, that all students in Edgecombe County belong to all of us. And I think that that's really important too, is that we just have a commitment. And I'm sure we'll talk about equity later on in our conversation, but we have a real commitment to making sure that any student who's attending Edgecombe Early College High School is supported and challenged and grown so that when they are ready to graduate, they are in the driver's seat of their education.
I think there's a point you made that I want to highlight, which is that this idea of merging two schools, right? So in fact, this is kind of a new model of schooling. It's high school and college happening at the same time. So we're used to thinking about college happening after high school, right? You go through high school, you stop, you graduate, and then you make a decision about whether you're going to go on or not. And what we see in the early college is that the college experience and the high school experience are happening at the same time. So students are simultaneously, as you said, they're high school students and they're college students. And they feel like college students, right?
They really do. And you're right, it's an integrated approach. So our students are taking both high school classes and college classes concurrently. They learn the habits of mind of being a college student and also a high school student. Culture is really important. And so we build a strong high school culture, but we also have a strong relationship with the community college that extends to that. And these students have a real pride and a real dignity, but also a sense of, they have a real pride, they have a real dignity, but they also have a sense of belonging in more than one institution. The integrated approach, Julie, that you mentioned, I think is so important because one of the things that research tells us is that transitions from school to school can be challenging, particularly for the target population of students that early colleges are really identified for. So by charter in North Carolina, there are really three main areas that three main student demographics that we really are looking for early colleges to serve. And the first of those is students that are potentially at risk of dropping out of school. The second of those is students that are first generation college students. And then the third piece is students that are positioned for accelerated learning. And not all early colleges serve all three of those demographics. But I think in most rural school systems that have one early college, you're going to find a little bit of all three of those in those early colleges. Certainly that's the case in Edgecombe. And so those supports that you mentioned earlier are so important because the supports for a student who's at risk of dropping out may or may not be similar to the supports for a student who's first gen, and may or may not be similar to the supports that a student who needs acceleration. And so at the heart of all of our early college focus is really about personalizing the learning experience. It's about moving away from an industrial one-size-fits-all model to a model that's really built with and for the students that we serve.
And I think it is important, again, to highlight that the early colleges are really focused at these students who are traditionally underserved in higher education. And I think that's where we really see a difference between early colleges and regular dual enrollment programs that might be implemented in a regular high school. In a regular high school, a dual enrollment program is often sort of an add-on. It's like an extra set of courses that students can take. And what we see in the data is that the students who take those dual enrollment courses tend to be higher achieving. They tend to be white students. They tend to be female students. We don't see that pattern in the early colleges. The early college students really are a much more diverse group of students that are taking. We see very representative in North Carolina. They're representative on income status, race and ethnicity. There are more girls than there are boys. and you'll see that happening. But I think a big part of that is really due to the fact that that early colleges specifically target these populations, right? Like they're doing extensive outreach to these students. And I know, or what I remember from Edgecombe, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, is that originally it was a little bit of a white flight school when it first started. You know, that it started and it was almost taking on a little bit of that role of that charter schools can sometimes take on, or magnet schools, where that was sort of more advantaged students were drawn to that. I know that you changed that approach. And can you talk a little bit about how you did that and what it meant to sort of shift it to have that focus on more underserved students?
Yeah. So, Julie, I think you're exactly right that the first few years of the early college, as we were trying to stand up the school between 2004 and 2014, our school had 5 principals in 10 years. Mm-hmm. And so there was a lot of leadership transition. There were 3 superintendents during that period of time. And so any school that's trying to develop a new model, an innovative model, and also learning kind of what we stand for and how we're going to operate, is going to suffer some challenges because of that. So when I was a new principal at the school and I was walking around visiting classrooms, I really saw 2 things that just leapt out to me. One is, wow, these classes are really small. And 2, wow, these classes are really white. And Edgecombe County is a county that is primarily 75 to 80% scholars of color. We're a community of color. Most of our leaders in the community are leaders of color. And so for the early college to not reflect the demographics of the community we served didn't feel like we were being authentic to the purpose of the early college. And this came to light for me at the end of my first year as principal. I had this bright idea of let's celebrate our graduates by taking their 5x7 graduate photos and let's create a graduate wall. And so the graduates were on that wall, and I was looking at that wall and I was thinking, wow, that wall is really not reflective of the community that I taught as a teacher at Tarboro High School for 16 years, or the community I see when I go to the grocery store. And so that became a problem of practice for us. And we looked very, very specifically at why was that happening? Because there was no one in our school in any leadership position or instructional position that had intentionally designed a system that was primarily for white students. But what we did find is that there were small micro barriers to the application process that we hadn't previously known. For example, we would have an open house in December to invite folks from the community to come visit the school. And in our mind, we were throwing the doors to the school open, we're inviting the community in, and at that open house, we would give you an application to the school. Well, what we found was that that open house, which occurred once a year and may or may not have been widely publicized, did not attract a broad cross-section of students that were eligible. The dropout students, the students that possibly are first-generation students, were missed by that open house. And so one small tweak that we made was that we just began going to visit every single middle school in the community. And when we visited those middle schools and we talked a lot about the early college opportunity, we did 2 things. One, I spoke very specifically to students and said, if you are a Black, brown, or white student, you are welcome at Edgecombe Early College. If your parents are Republican, Democratic, or Libertarian, you are welcome at Edgecombe Community College. If you identify as a he, a she, or a they, you are welcome at Edgecombe Community College. Regardless of what side of the railroad tracks you were born on, regardless of how much money you have, you are welcome to apply to the early college. So the first was we did some direct messaging about equity because we realized we needed to dispel the idea that our school was exclusive. That was not the school I wanted to lead as a principal, and I don't think that's the school that matched the values for which we were designed. We wanted to be inclusive. And so that messaging was important. But the second thing, Julie, that was so important was that when we met with those middle school students, we took a stack of applications with us. And in that room, in front of every middle school student in the county, we would say, hey, after listening to us today, if you think you're remotely interested in the early college, we want to give you a copy of the application right now and put it in your hands. And then we also want to get your name, your phone number, and your email address so that we could communicate with you during the application process. One of the light bulb moments for us, and this seems like common sense talking with you about it now, Julie, but one of those moments for us was that those same students that needs the support of an early college environment, they also need support when they're applying to an early college. Their need for support doesn't happen when they walk in the doors of our school. Their need for support happens long before that. And so we became more inclusive about the application process. We provided ongoing support to parents during the application process. And here we are now, 8 years later, and well over 50% of our student body are scholars of color, especially a large number of Latin students, Latinx students, who have discovered that the early college is a fantastic opportunity for them to get a credential while they're still in high school. We translate all of our public relations materials, all of our letters, and all of that content. We translate that into Spanish so that we can make sure that we reach that community. And I'm really proud to say that that graduate wall I mentioned earlier now has a lot more diversity on it.
And I think it's important for people to know that early colleges that have positive impacts, and particularly, I like to think that early college, because it's a very complicated intervention. It's not something easy to implement, right? You've got all kinds of different people that have to coordinate and collaborate. And so why on earth would we serve students who are already going to be fine without that intervention? You know, that all this effort and all this time should really be spent on helping students who might otherwise struggle to go to college and making a difference for those students.
It has been a very insightful discussion on the introduction of early college high schools and the impact it has on post-secondary outcomes with Dr. Julie Edmonds and Matt Bristow-Smith. Julie and her colleagues have written a book titled Early Colleges as a Model for Schooling. The book is available for purchase at Harvard Education Press and on Amazon. Join us next time for episode 2 as Julie and Matt offer more insight on the topic of early college high schools with a focus on equity, school support, and student impacts. From all of us here at Serve to all of you, thank you so much for spending this time with us. Until next time.